Hello and good day to you. Welcome to Limping Through Models with me, Nathan, and this is the final part of this four-part series of my HL scale barn build. Today, we're going to take care of the roof. We're going to tar paper the roof. We're going to put the cupola on. We're going to do a little bit of weathering, and at the very end, you're going to see the final product in its beautiful state. And with all that in mind, let's get started. For as nice as the details of the inside of the barn are, it's time to cover all that up with the roof pieces provided in the kit. The roof boards have slats cut into each end that match up with tabs that stick out from the edges of the front and back of the barn. And they work out pretty well here. One side note here, I'm starting to think this whole thing about staining wood on both sides to keep it from warping is more of a hope than it is an actual technique, because here I am again trying to brace this piece of wood down, make it as flat as possible, because the staining just warped it one way or another. So I got to figure out what to do about that. Maybe do less stain or some nonsense like that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this is a flaw in how the kit was designed or in how I built it, but on the bottom roof parts, the tabs and slots did not match up, so I had to cut out slots, make them bigger, so that they would match up and fit in where the tabs lay on the actual model. Now there's a little bit of a gap between the tab and the slot, because there's like about probably a 1/16 of an inch bit of space between, which doesn't even matter because it's going to be covered in tar paper. And once again, bowed wood leads me to weigh this down with my fingers to keep it from bowing any further. And side one is done, and it's looking pretty good. Now that I have both sides done, because I didn't want to bore you with the second half, because that's, pretty obvious, it's time to put on the tar paper. And they give you a generous amount of tar paper in this particular kit here. And it's done. No, I'm kidding, it's not done. While some instructions call for glue for the roof application, I like to use double-sided tape from 3M. And I use this on tar paper roofs, I use this on shingled roofs. I find this to be a clean method of putting roof material on a model, more so than glue, because you don't have to mess around with glue, getting sticky fingers and all this other nonsense. So I apply the tape on the roof as flat as I can get it and as straight as I can get it, because I'll be stacking these pieces on top of each other. And one thing you have to realize with using this 3M tape is that the edges, the stickiness that's on the tape material kind of bleeds out from the edges. So you have to rub it down just to make sure you have all the sticky stuff off, so you have an absolutely flat surface for the roofing material to attach to. And of course, I make sure to cut off any excess tape that bled over the edge of the roof. All the tape has been applied, and I'm doing one final pass to make sure all the sticky bits between the tape have been removed. Next, the tar paper gets taken off of its paper sprue. Little did I know you can actually laser cut construction paper. So each of these pieces of tar paper were connected to each other at the middle and on the ends to the giant paper sprue that goes around the whole deal. After allegedly freeing the tar paper from the paper sprue, I checked to make sure that everything was truly separated, and I did find that there were a couple pieces that were still stuck together. But a healthy tug of the tar paper was enough to get those separated for sure. I knew I wanted to weather these using some sort of sandpaper technique, and was trying a couple different methods that didn't really work out for me because I felt they would take too long. So me being impatient as I am, I decided I was going to take all of the pieces, bunch them together, and start by just roughing them up with an X-Acto knife on the edge. Be sure to cut away from yourself when doing this, or else you may cut yourself, which may or may not have happened to me here. Keep an eye out for a bandage that may pop up here. Now it's time to put on the roofing material. I expose the stickiness of the double-sided tape here, one strip at a time. Not sure why, there's not really any reason for it, that's just what I do. And then apply the roof material to the strip. Being sure to overlap the bottom edge of the wood part of the roof. Seeing how I was comfortable with the piece of roof material that I had on that section of the roof, I exposed all the stickiness on that particular section and added the roof pieces therein. And through the magic of editing, the whole roof has now been covered. With sandpaper, I take that across the surface of the roof as it's attached to the roof of the barn, and I cut off the excess from the edges, leaving about a 1/16 of an inch to overdrape the edge. As I sand it down more on the edge, it's going to drape over and give a really nice effect after the fact. An additional piece of tar paper is cut out to be applied to the apex of the roof, joining where both sides of the roof meet. After test fitting, I glob glue on the bottom side of that strip, make sure I have it covering the full length of the barn, smooth it out, and apply it to the apex of the barn. With sandpaper, I rough it up and kind of make it blend into the rest of the roof. And then I cut off the excess. Another piece that needs roofing material is the cupola that goes at the top of the roof. I used some of the spare pieces that I had left over to cover that entirely. I used copious amounts of glue on the inside of the cupola to attach it to the roof, using the same method I used for the actual roof of the cupola, letting all that tacky glue drip down and attach itself to the roof. And now the overall structure of the barn is complete, but I'm not quite done yet. I want to use a weathering method I've never used before, and that's utilizing pan pastels. I have used weathering chalks before, but they don't really stick too well, so I wanted to use something that was a little more permanent. So I happened to find some pastels at, of all places, Five Below. Using a razor blade, I scratched off the surface of the pastel, used a brush to get in there and kind of scrape some of that pastel onto the brush itself, and then start with the windows, streaking white down either edge of the window. I applied the streaking to both sides of the barn on all the windows. Next, it's time to do a little bit of weathering of the roof itself. Starting from the cupola down, I decided I was going to streak some lighter colors down the roof. And you can see some of the effects of that as I'm going through. It's very subtle, but it's enough for me. I mean, this is my first try. I'm probably going to, try this again some other time, but I didn't want to overdo it. And then in random spots of the roof, I started with a glob of black at the top, and then I just streaked that down either edge of the roof. And then using a bigger brush, I decided to just go to town and do just an overall weathering, whatever. I don't know what I'm doing here. Seems like a good idea at the time. The last thing I wanted to do was take some brown and kick that up the side of the barn. Because eventually I want to put this on a diorama, or maybe even on a layout itself. And this will help with blending it into the actual area. And that, my friends, is a completed barn to my liking. And with that, I am done. Boom. And there you have it. There it is in all of its glory. The final product. The barn built and in a weathered state. It is looking fantastic. It is looking wonderful. I am very happy with how this looks. It looks a lot like the picture, and that's what I try and go for, because I'm not very, I'm not too creative to the point where I can just do my own thing or anything like that. But if I can get it looking like the picture, I call that a win. And this right here is a win. And I'm very excited. I'm very happy all y'all came along for this ride and this build. And looking forward to the next build coming up. Starting to work on that right now. So keep it tuned here. Next week, we're going to have part 1 of whatever it is I decide to do. So thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and do everything you need to do to get back here next week on Limping Through Models with Nathan.